The station was older than it looked, which was saying something. Its walls carried soft lines from decades of repairs, and the lights hummed with a gentle, tired patience. It floated at the quiet edge of mapped space, where trade routes slowed and cultures overlapped, like cautious strangers learning to share a table. Evan Hale stood in the corridor, outside his assigned quarters, reading the room number again, even though it had not changed since the last time he checked. The universal housing notice pulsed faintly on his wrist screen. Shared living arrangement confirmed. Occupants human salary protocol. Total coexistence. Evan sighed. He had known the assignment would involve sharing. Mixed species stations always did that to save space and encourage cultural bonding. He had expected noise differences, maybe strange sleeping hours, or the smell of alien food that refused to stay in the kitchen. He had not expected the phrase total coexistence. That's just station talk, he muttered to himself. Sounds fancy probably means don't be rude. He pressed his palm to the door plate. It slid open with a quiet whisper. The room inside was larger than Evan had imagined, divided cleanly down the center by light markers on the floor. One side already looked lived in. Soft curved furniture grew directly from the wall, shaped like smooth stone that had learned how to breathe. Thin strands of glowing fiber drifted gently through the air like slow-moving threads of light. In the center of that space stood an alien woman. She was tall but not uncomfortably so. Her body shape was close enough to human to feel familiar, yet different enough to make Evan's eyes hesitate. Her skin shimmered with faint color shifts, like dawn seen through water. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting light instead of absorbing it. She turned when he entered and studied him with calm interest. "You are late," she said. "You are late," her voice was clear. Smooth and perfectly translated. Evan blinked. Sorry. First day confusion, she tilted her head slightly. Time confusion is common in humans. I have read this great, Evan said. Forcing a smile, you must be my roommate. I'm Evan. I am Silith, she replied. We will be sharing this room and everything in it. She said it simply like stating the weather. Evan nodded, right, yeah. Sharing the room. Totally fine. He stepped toward the human-designated side and set his bag down. The furniture there was more familiar. A standard sleep pod, a desk, a chair that looked like it understood backs. He began unpacking, grateful for something normal to focus on. Behind him, Silith spoke again. Before we continue, she said, we must establish sharing parameters. Evan paused. Parameters, yes? She replied, total coexistence requires clarity. We will share physical space knowledge, daily routines, emotional states, and internal processes. Evan slowly turned around. Sorry, he said. Internal what? Internal processes, Silith repeated thought patterns. Emotional responses, memory access when relevant. Evan stared at her. The translator did not flicker. There was no error warning. I think he said carefully, there might be a misunderstanding. Silith's eyes focused more sharply on him. The translation is correct. No, I mean... Evan rubbed the back of his neck. When humans say share a room, we usually mean we sleep in the same space. We try not to steal each other's stuff, that kind of thing. Silith considered this. That is inefficient, Evan let out a small laugh. Yeah, we are good at that. She stepped closer, stopping, just short of what Evan considered his personal space. Her expression remained neutral but curious. In Zalari culture, she said, cohabitation is sacred. Privacy is associated with deception or emotional harm. Sharing a space means sharing the self. Evan shifted his weight. Humans really like privacy. I know, say left said. Your species has an unusually strong attachment to internal separation. You categorize thoughts, feelings, roles. This is very rare, trust me. Evan said it's a survival skill. Sailor studied him again longer. This time, explain. Evan hesitated. He was used to explaining human behavior and reports and briefings, but never like this, never. To someone who was going to live 3 meters away from him. We filter things, he said. Not because we want to lie, because if we didn't, we'd get overwhelmed. We don't feel everything all at once. We choose what to focus on. Sailor's head tilted again. Slower this time. You limit your own awareness constantly. Evan replied on purpose. That sounds dangerous. It's actually the opposite. Evan said it keeps us functional. Say left was silent for several seconds. The glowing fibers around her shifted color, responding to something internal. This is not how my people exist, she said at last. We experience continuously emotion. Thought, memory. They flow together. Evan tried to imagine that, and failed almost immediately. That sounds exhausting. It is normal. Sayla replied, but you are not Solari. No argument there. She looked at the dividing line on the floor. The station assigned us total coexistence. Stations make mistakes, Evan said quickly. All the time. I once got assigned a bed, meant for someone with 4 legs. Sayla seemed amused by this, though her expression barely changed. You adapted. I slept on the floor. Impressive, Evan smiled despite himself. Sayla stepped back and gestured to the room. Perhaps we should begin with partial sharing. That sounds much better, Evan said. For now, she added. They spent the next hour negotiating what partial sharing meant. Evan explained Locke's drawers and the idea of asking before touching. Salif listened carefully, asking precise questions that made Evan realize how many human rules were based on feeling rather than logic. Eventually, they reached something like an agreement. As Evan finished arranging his desk, he felt Sayla's gaze on him again. You are thinking about something, she said. He froze. No, I'm not. You are, she replied. Your breathing changed. Your attention narrowed. Evan turned slowly. You can tell that, yes, even if I don't say anything. Yes, Evan exhaled. Okay, that's a little unsettling. Sailor's eyes softened. I will not intrude without consent. Thank you, she hesitated. But you were thinking. Evan considered lying. Then he remembered this was an exchange assignment. Honesty was kind of the point. I was thinking, he said, that this is going to be harder than I expected. Salith nodded. I was thinking the same. There was a strange comfort in that. Later, as the station lights dimmed to simulate evening, Evan lay in his sleep pod staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of life support and the slow movement of Salis, glowing fibers across her side of the room. He was just beginning to relax when her voice drifted across the space. Evan, yeah. He replied, I am experiencing uncertainty. Evan smiled faintly in the dark. Welcome to humanity. She considered that. Is this why you separate your thoughts? Pretty much, he said. Too much at once can break you. Salith was quiet for a moment. You are fragile sometimes. Evan agreed, but we're also good at adapting. The fibers glowed a little brighter. I am curious to see this, she said. Evan closed his eyes. not entirely sure if sleep would come easily, but oddly hopeful that tomorrow would be interesting. He had no idea how true that would be. Morning on the station did not arrive with sunlight. It came softly through a gradual shift in the lights, and a gentle change in the background, that told every species it was time to wake. Evan opened his eyes slowly, confused for half a second, before memory caught up with him. Ahaha, shared room. Alien roommate. Total coexistence. He groaned quietly and sat up in his sleep pod. Across the room, Salith was already awake. She stood near her side of the space, unmoving, her glowing fibers drifting in slow patterns. Her eyes were focused on Evan, not in a rude way, but with open curiosity. "You have awakened," she said. "Yeah," Evan replied, rubbing his face. "Humans do that after sleep." "You slept inefficiently," she said. "You entered rest state late and exited early." Evan glanced at the clock. "Welcome to stress." She stepped closer, stopping near the center line. "Your mental activity increased multiple times. During rest, was there danger?" "No," Evan said. "Just thoughts." Salith seemed deeply interested. "They continued even while you slept?" "Always," he said. "Brains don't have an off switch." "That explains much," she replied. Evan stood and stretched, suddenly very aware of being observed. "So how much of that can you tell?" She paused. "I did not access content. Only patterns." "That's comforting, I think." Salith tilted her head. "You think often humans do that too much." Evan said coffee helps. She followed him with her eyes as he moved toward the food unit. When he activated it, the machine hummed and produced a simple human breakfast. Salith watched closely. "You consume nutrition alone," she said most of the time. Evan replied, "It's personal space." "In my culture, meals are shared mentally as well as physically." She said memories and emotions related to nourishment are exchanged. Evan nearly choked on his drink. "Yeah, we don't do that." "I know," she said. "I'm observing that word again, observing." As the day continued, Evan noticed that Selah truly meant it. She watched how he organized his work tools, how he paused before responding to messages, how he hummed quietly when thinking. She asked questions not constantly, but often enough that Evan felt like a walking research project. "Why do you pause before answering?" she asked while he reviewed station reports. "Because I don't want to say the wrong thing," Evan replied, but the first response is the most honest. She said honest doesn't always mean helpful. Evan said she absorbed that silently. Later, Evan sat at his desk, working through a problem involving cross-species, scheduling conflicts. It was boring but important work. He muttered to himself as he rearranged time locks. Silith suddenly spoke. "You are dividing the issue." "Yeah," Evan said, "breaking it into smaller parts. Why?" "Because it's easier to solve that way." She stepped closer, her interest clear. "Salary minds do not divide. We hold all factors at once." "That sounds impressive," Evan said, "but also overwhelming. It is efficient," she replied. Evan leaned back in his chair, maybe. "But humans don't work like that. We specialize, we focus. We put some things aside so we don't freeze." Saleth considered this deeply. "Your species limits perception to increase function." "Exactly." There was a long pause. "I wish to attempt this," she said. Evan blinked. "Attempt what? Human-style compartmentalization." She replied, "I wish to experience it." Evan frowned. "I don't think that's something you just turn on yet." "You do it instinctively," she said. "That's because we've been doing it forever." Sailor's glowing fiber shifted color slowly. Then teach me, Evan hesitated. Teaching a human skill to an alien mind sounded like a terrible idea. But this was a research station. A cultural exchange was literally his job. Okay, he said carefully. We can try something simple. He stood and picked up a small data pad. Focus only on this, he said. Ignore everything else. Sayeth took the pad and stared at it. Her posture stiffened. The fibers around her dimmed and flickered. This is uncomfortable, she said. That's normal, Evan replied. Your brain is used to processing everything. She closed her eyes. There is resistance. Humans get that too, Evan said. We call it distraction. Several seconds passed. Then Selah opened her eyes again. I am isolating the task, she said slowly. Other inputs feel distant. Evan smiled. That's it. That's compartmentalizing. Her eyes widened slightly. This is quiet. Yeah, Evan said softly. That's why we do it. Salif studied the data pad again. Her focus sharp and narrow. Evan watched in amazement as she worked, faster than before, her movements precise. After a minute, she stopped. This is powerful, she said. I understand now. Evan nodded. Just don't overdo it. Humans need breaks for a reason. She looked at him thoughtfully. You protect yourselves from yourselves. Pretty much word spread quickly on the station. Sales productivity increased noticeably. Other researchers noticed her sudden efficiency and began asking questions. She did not explain everything, but she did mention human cognitive filtering. Evan found himself called into meetings he did not expect to attend. Humans were usually seen as adaptable, but emotionally messy. This was different. One evening after a long day, Evan returned to the room exhausted. He collapsed into his chair and stared at nothing. Sayeth noticed immediately. You are overwhelmed, she said. Yeah. Evan replied, too many meetings. Why do you not filter now? She asked. Evan smiled weakly. Because sometimes you have to feel it to process it. Sayeth approached slowly. May I observe? Evan nodded, sure. She watched quietly as he breathed, as he let the stress settle instead of fighting it. For the first time, she did not try to analyze. She simply witnessed. This is another form of strength. She said softly, letting yourself be human. Evan said yes. Later that night, as the station entered rest cycle again, Selah spoke. I shared your method today with my research group, she said. Evan turned toward her. How did that go? They were skeptical, she replied, but the results are undeniable. Evan smiled in the dark. Humans surprise people. Solace fibers glowed warmly. You are teaching us more than you realize. Evan lay back and closed his eyes. For the first time since arriving, he did not feel like a guest in someone else's space. He felt like part of something new, and somewhere deep inside her unfamiliar mind, Saleth was beginning to understand that sharing everything did not mean losing oneself. It meant choosing how to connect. The change did not stay quiet for long. By the third cycle, after Saleth began using human-style compartmentalization, the station's research core felt different. Conversations paused more often. Data streams updated faster. Problems that had stayed unsolved for years were suddenly being approached from new angles. Evan noticed it first in the hallways. Aliens who normally moved with calm, flowing focus now stopped mid-walk, staring at wrist screens with something close to surprise. A group of celery researchers gathered near a display wall, their glowing fibers pulsing in sharp, excited patterns. Saleth stood among them, calm but alert. Evan slowed as he passed. Trying not to look like he was listening, he failed. This method creates separation without loss. One of the researchers said, "It should not be possible. It contradicts our cognitive unity." Another added, Saleth spoke evenly, "It does not destroy unity and it pauses it." That sentence spread faster than any official report. Later that day, Evan was called into the Research Council chamber. He sat at a long curved table, very aware that he was the only human in the room. The others watched him with open curiosity, not hostility, but the attention still made his shoulders tense. A senior coordinator spoke first. "You are Evan Hale, Human Exchange Specialist." "That's me," Evan said. "You introduced a cognitive method to research your sale. If I explained how humans think?" Evan replied carefully. She did the hard part. Saleth stood nearby her posture, confident. "The method allows temporary narrowing of perception." She said it increases clarity. One of the council members leaned forward. "Your species evolved this naturally." Evan shrugged. "We had to. Our brains aren't built to handle everything at once." There was a soft ripple of reaction through the room. Another voice spoke. "Our people believed such limitation would cause emotional damage." Evan smiled slightly. "It can, if done wrong but used carefully. It's protective." Saleth added, "Humans do not reject emotion. They schedule it." That caused a pause. The council dismissed Evan after more questions than he liked, but fewer than he feared. When he returned to the room later, Saleth was already there, studying multiple data pads at once. "You're multitasking," Evan said. "Yes," she replied. But with compartments, Evan laughed quietly. "You're a fast learner." She looked up. "Your method revealed something unexpected." "What's that?" "When I isolate a problem, I am not weakened," she said. "I am braver." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Braver, yes. Fear becomes manageable when it is not everywhere." Evan leaned against his desk, considering that humans had known this for centuries. But hearing it from someone else made it feel new. As days passed, Saleth's work reached a breakthrough. She solved a long-standing, theoretical block in interspecies signal harmonics, a problem that required balancing emotion-based perception with mathematical precision. Her solution relied on switching mental modes. At exact moments, the station erupted with attention. Messages came from other research hubs. Requests for demonstrations arrived hourly. The phrase, "human cognitive partitioning," appeared in official logs. Evan felt strange about it. Proud, yes, but also uneasy one evening. As the artificial night cycle dimmed the lights, Evan sat quietly staring at his hands. Saleth noticed immediately. "You are conflicted," she said. "Yeah." Evan admitted, "I didn't mean to change things this much." "Change was inevitable," she replied. "You exist?" Evan smiled faintly. "That's a dangerous way to think." She stepped closer. "You fear misuse." He nodded. "Humans have a history of tools being used badly." Saleth considered this, "Then guidance is required." The next day, Saleth invited Evan to participate in a controlled demonstration. She wanted to show the council how a human mind adapted to Zalari-style openness. Evan hesitated but agreed. The chamber was quiet when he stepped inside. Saleth stood across from him. "I will share," she said. "Not all, but enough." Evan took a breath. "Okay?" She reached out, not physically, but mentally. Evan felt it like pressure behind his eyes, a sudden awareness of emotional layers that were not his own curiosity. Focus, calm that carried depth beneath it. His instinct screamed to shut down. Instead, he adapted. Evan did what humans did best. He created internal shelves. One for sensation, one for emotion, one for analysis. He did it without thinking. the way someone catches themselves before falling. The pressure eased. Sailor's eyes widened. You reorganized in real time? She said softly. Evan exhaled. Yeah, we do that. The council watched in stunned silence. Afterwards, Saleth spoke privately with Evan in their room. You did not break, she said. Many of my kind would have. Evan shrugged. Humans break all the time. We just get good at putting ourselves back together. Sayeth was quiet for a long moment. I believed sharing everything meant dissolving boundaries. She said I was wrong. Evan looked at her. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. That night, Saleth did something unexpected. She turned off part of her ambient emotional field. The room felt quieter, calmer. This is how humans live, she said. With choice, Evan nodded, and with trust. Across the station, the findings spread. Other species began experimenting cautiously, not copying humans exactly, but learning from them. Humanity's reputation shifted. They were no longer just adaptable survivors or emotional creatures. They were seen as architects of the inner self. Evan lay in a sleep pod later, listening to the soft hum of the station. Sharing everything, he realized, did not mean losing control. It meant learning when to hold on and when to let go. And humanity, it seemed, had been practicing that balance all along. The station felt quieter than before, even though nothing physical had changed. The lights still followed their slow cycles. The hall still carried the low hum of machines and distant voices, but something deeper had shifted. It was the silence of minds learning restraint. Evan noticed it when he walked through the common areas. Species that once shared thoughts freely now paused, choosing words instead of letting emotions spill openly. It was not fear, it was control. Saleth walked beside him, her glowing fibers dimmer than they used to be. Not weaker focused. You are observing the change. She said, yeah. Evan replied, feels like the station took a deep breath. This is unfamiliar to many. Sila said choice creates hesitation. Humans live in hesitation, Evan said. It's not always bad. They reached their room, and for the first time since moving in, Say left, stopped at the door. I wish to request something. She said. Evan looked at her, sure. I want to experience deeper human sharing. She said, not knowledge, not techniques, emotion. But on your terms. Evan's expression softened. That's a big ask, I understand. She replied, you may refuse. Evan thought about it. Humans guarded emotions fiercely, even from each other, but Selah was not asking to take them. She was asking to understand. Okay, he said slowly. But we go step by step. Selah inclined her head. Agreed. They sat on opposite sides of the room. Evan closed his eyes, something he rarely did around others. Humans don't broadcast feelings, he said, so I'll explain instead. Sayeth waited completely still. When humans care, Evan continued. We don't always show it. Sometimes we joke. Sometimes we stay quiet. Sometimes we get angry instead. Saleth absorbed this anger can mean care. Yeah, Evan said. We're complicated. He let one emotion rise gently. Something small and safe, a memory of home. A quiet evening, warm light through a window. Say life felt it not directly, but like warmth near a fire, her fibers glowed softly. This is layered, she said. There is comfort, but also distance. That's human emotion, Evan said. We feel things with history attached. Sayala opened her perception slightly, careful not to overwhelm him. Evan felt curiosity brush against his thoughts. Respectful and light, you carry emotion like an archive. She said. Evan smiled. Yeah, and sometimes it's messy. Salith withdrew slowly. Thank you. From that moment, something between them shifted. Not closeness exactly, but understanding. Elsewhere on the station, not everyone was adapting as smoothly. Some species struggled with the idea of limiting awareness. A few researchers reported anxiety. When trying to compartmentalize, others refused outright, calling it unnatural. The council grew concerned. Evan was called in again. You have introduced a powerful mental tool, the coordinator said, but not all minds are suited. To it, Evan nodded. That's why humans learn it gradually. Kids don't start with full control. Sayeth spoke calmly. The issue is not the method. It is expectation. Humans do not demand perfection from the mind. That surprised several council members. We expect struggle, Evan added. We plan for it. The council agreed to slow the spread, turning the discovery into a guided practice rather than a universal standard. That night, Evan returned to the room. Tired but relieved, Salith was waiting. You protected them, she said. I protected everyone, Evan replied. Including you. She studied him carefully. Humans protect even when it costs them. Not always, Evan said. But we try. Sayla hesitated. In my culture, sharing everything removes misunderstanding. But your people manage misunderstanding constantly. We live with it, Evan said. We talk through it. Sayla considered that this requires patience. Yeah, Evan said with a grin. That's our hidden superpower. Later, Salif attempted something new. She created a boundary. It was subtle, but Evan felt it immediately. Her emotional field no longer filled the room. Automatically, it stayed close to her, contained. I am choosing not to share unless invited, she said. Evan's eyes widened slightly. How does that feel? Strange, she admitted, but freeing. Evan nodded. That's how humans feel all the time. Across the station, others noticed Sailor's change. She became a bridge rather than a flood, explaining concepts without overwhelming those around her. Humans were no longer seen as fragile minds, hiding behind walls. They were seen as builders of inner space. One cycle later, a message arrived from Earth. Human leadership had heard of the research. Evan read it quietly, then looked up at Salith. They want to send more humans, he said. Teachers. Sayla's fibers brightened. You will not be alone, Evan smiled. Yes, humanity's reputation just leveled up. Silas looked thoughtful. Sharing everything does not mean losing oneself. Evan nodded. It means choosing connection. They sat together in the quiet room, two different minds learning the same lesson. Strength was not in openness alone. It was in balance, and humanity once again had changed the galaxy, not by force, but by understanding how to live inside their own heads. The station no longer felt like an experiment. It felt like a home. Evan realized this while walking through the central corridor, watching different species move past one another with a new kind of ease. Conversations happened in words now. Not emotional waves. Pauses were accepted. Silence was no longer seen as a problem that needed fixing. Understanding had changed shape. Salith walked beside him. Her steps calm, her presence contained but warm. She no longer filled the space around her without meaning to when she shared. It was deliberate. You are smiling, she said. Yeah. Evan replied, just noticing things. The station has stabilized, she said. Mentally, people figured out how to breathe, Evan said, inside their own heads. Salif considered that your species breathes inward. That might be the nicest way anyone's ever said. We overthink, Evan replied with a grin. They reached the observation deck, where stars stretched endlessly across the viewport. Other beings stood there too, quietly watching. Some spoke. Some didn't. No one felt the need to fill the silence. Sayla watched the stars for a long time. In my culture, she said slowly, we believed unity meant constant connection. We feared separation, and now... Evan asked, now I see separation can be kindness. She replied, it gives others room to exist. Evan nodded. Humans figured that out the hard way. Messages continued to arrive from across known space. Research stations, diplomatic hubs, learning colonies. Everyone wanted to know how humans managed internal balance without collapsing under it. The answer disappointed some. There was no machine, no formula, no shortcut, just practice. Human teachers arrived weeks later, not experts with grand speeches, but ordinary people, psychologists, counselors, even artists. They spoke about focus, rest, emotional boundaries, and failure, especially failure. Say, if listened to every session, humans accept mental error, she said afterward. We expect it, Evan replied. That's why we forgive ourselves. She absorbed that quietly. One evening, after a long cycle of meetings and questions, Evan returned to the room to find Sayela. Sitting in stillness, you are quiet. He said, I'm reflecting. She replied, he sat across from her. About what? About sharing, she said. And what it means now. Evan waited when I first said sharing everything. Salif continued, I believed closeness required full exposure, no barriers, no limits, and now? Evan asked gently. Now I see the trust is choosing what to share, she said, not being unable to stop. Evan smiled. That's a very human conclusion. Sailor's fibers glowed softly. Then, perhaps humanity's greatest strength is not adaptation. Oh, Evan said. It is restraint, she replied. You know, when not to act, when not to speak, when not to feel everything. Evan leaned back. We don't always get it right. No, she agreed. But you try again. The station council made its final report public. Soon after, it did not credit humans as superior. It did not frame the discovery as a replacement for other cultures. Instead, it called it a perspective. Humanity was described as a species that survived chaos, not by controlling the universe, but by organizing themselves. The phrase that spread fastest was simple. Humans choose their inner space. Salith stood beside Evan during the broadcast. You changed how we see minds. She said, we just showed you how we cope. Evan replied. She looked at him thoughtfully. That may be the same thing. On Evan's final cycle aboard the station, he packed his bag slowly. He had been offered an extension. He had considered it. Sayla watched from her side of the room. You are leaving, she said. Yeah, Evan replied. Others can take it from here. You taught us, she said, and learned from us. Evan zipped his bag. That's how sharing should work. She stepped closer, stopping just before the center line that no longer felt like a boundary. Will humans and Zalari share again? She asked. Evan smiled. I think we already are, just differently. Salith reached out, not with her mind, but with a small, careful gesture learned from humans. She placed her hand lightly against his arm. Then share this, she said. Evan felt it gratitude. Respect, understanding. Oh offered. Not forced, he accepted it. When Evan left the station, life went on, research continued. Cultures adjusted, mistakes were made and corrected, but something permanent remained. Across the galaxy, when new species met for the first time, they no longer assumed that closeness required exposure. They asked instead, "What are you comfortable sharing?" And humanity, once seen as fragile and overly emotional, became known for something else entirely. They were the ones who understood that sharing everything did not mean losing yourself. It meant knowing who you were and choosing when to open the door